Good morning. Grab your cup. What would your life be like if you didn't have fear? If fear wasn't present in relationships and how you show up at work, in your thoughts about the world or about money, what would life be like if fear wasn't present? If there's one thing that I think would make the biggest difference for people, it's learning how to live without fear. And it's not like we're ever going to be 100% fear-free. But if you think about it, every major religion, every wisdom teaching since the beginning of time has taught us to fear not. The Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Torah, both the Old and the New Testament all say, I'm sure there's many things that they have in common, but one thing that is strongly in common is the message of not living in fear. Jesus said it all the time, and in fact, the King James Version of the Bible says some version of fear not, do not fear, more than 360 times throughout that version of the New Testament. So not having fear has been taught throughout the ages, and it's one of the most difficult things for people to let go of. And why is that? I got really curious about why that is. And then as I worked on my own journey, and now the work that I do with my clients as a transformational health and whole life coach is to work on rewiring the thinking, because one of the things that happens is thoughts that we think a lot fire over and over and over, and those neural pathways get very deeply created. They can be changed. That's the good news. It's called neuroplasticity. You can change your thinking patterns, but if you don't do the work to do that, then there's an automatic firing of thoughts. And if your thoughts have tended to be fearful rather than something else, you're going to be in the presence of fear a lot. But at an even deeper level than your thinking is your nervous system. Fear is actually a nervous system response. And of course, yeah, there are times when it makes good sense to be fearful about something that looks very dangerous, right? That's why we have the ability so that it stops us. But people live in fear over all kinds of things that do not need to be looked through a fearful lens. They look at their relationship and the words that they want to say. They look at how they show up in their job. They just look at the world around them and they're afraid. And that stops life experience. That stops the expression of the best version of ourselves. And there's a reason why throughout time, all of those wisdom teachers and all of those major books have had that common message to live without fear. So the nervous system, remember, fear is just an emotion like love or anger or joy or sadness. It's just an emotion. But the nervous system can get stuck in fear. And then whatever the nervous system is doing will drive those thoughts. It's virtually impossible to rewire your thinking if you don't address your nervous system. There's a saying in the trauma world that your state determines your story, which means the state of your nervous system, what's happening in your body, will determine what you're saying to yourself and what your thoughts are. So the state of your nervous system determines your story. If you don't shift your nervous system, you're not going to be able to break the story. And that means the story of fear. So if you are a person that is fearful all the time, which would show up as anxiety, which would show up as compulsiveness, which would show up as being guarded and afraid or stopping yourself, it would show up as a lack of confidence. Where else would it show up for you? Where else is fear behind who you are and what you do and the choices that you make? When you really look at that and you see how impactful that is, it's worth doing what it takes to teach your nervous system that you don't have to live in fear. And honestly, it's worth doing if so many wise and powerful teachings throughout humankind have said, fear not. If Jesus gave one message over and over, which was fear not, that is worth, in my mind, that is worth doing what it takes to overcome that automatic machinery of my nervous system is afraid, and now I'm having fearful thoughts. So it's a process. If living in fear, lack of confidence, constant anxiety, guardedness, blocking yourself from what you want to have, if that's been a part of your life, go ahead and put talk in the comments so that we can connect. I'll send you the calendar link. It's a free conversation, and we can connect about how do I do that work in my nervous system and rewire my thoughts so that I can be fearful when it's appropriate, like if something's really dangerous, because we have it for a reason and it's an emotion for a reason. But how can I be living my life without fear being the driving factor? We'd love to talk to you. Have a good day.